My name is Abigail. I am 31. People call me the black sheep of my family, but they say it with smiles when they want my help and with cold eyes when they don't. Tonight I stood at the glass doors of the Riverside Grill, holding a small gift bag with a silver bow. It was my parents' 35th anniversary dinner. The lobby smelled like lemon candles and butter. A string band played in the corner. I had booked the rooftop, hired the band, paid for custom flowers, and set up a slideshow with old photos of my parents by the river where they first met. I wanted peace. I wanted to be seen. When the host lifted the velvet rope, I walked in ready to smile. But my father looked up from the long table dressed in white linen and said, with a tight jaw and a voice like a door slamming, "You were not invited." His words were so sharp that even the band missed a note. I thought he was joking. I laughed a small laugh that didn't sound like me. "Dad, I came to celebrate you," I said softly. He stood, tugged his suit jacket, and pointed at the door. "Leave. Now." My mother stared at her plate. My aunt sipped water like she could hide inside her glass. My brother Leo looked down at his phone. My sister Nora folded her napkin into tiny, angry squares. I felt the heat rise in my face. The host shifted from one foot to another. Then I heard my father hiss, "Security." It was not a whisper. The band stopped playing. Two guards walked from the side, tall men in dark suits. My father didn't even look at me when he said, "Get this beggar out." Beggar. I looked down at my shoes, clean black heels. My dress was simple blue. My hands were not shaking. My heart was. I put the gift bag on the nearest chair. The silver bow looked silly now, and I pulled out my phone. "Okay," I said as if we were talking about the weather. "I'll go." My father spread his arms, a rude king at his table. Finally, I tapped my screen. The silent bank app opened with a face scan. The total support for this event showed on the screen. The rooftop fee, the band, the special cake my mother loved, the flowers, the slideshow projector, the private valet, the tip that made everyone smile. It was all listed under a quiet company name. Mine. I pressed cancel. The number at the bottom, $62000, turned from green to gray. The space in my chest felt empty and bright at the same time. I put my phone away and looked at the guards. "I'm leaving," I told them. They did not touch me. They didn't have to. I walked out of the hall, past the lemon candles and the string band with their silent violins, past a row of white roses that smelled like a promise no one kept. I didn't cry. I didn't run. I simply left. The story didn't start tonight. It started years ago in a small kitchen with a broken fan and a mother who said, "Not now, Abigail," whenever I asked for more time to talk. It started with a father who liked winners and thought I didn't smile enough to be one. Growing up, I was the child who read the billboards out loud and asked why money made people different. When I turned 18, I left home with one suitcase and a secret plan to help people who were ignored like me. I took small jobs, learned hard lessons, and started a digital marketing service for small shops. The shops grew and so did I. I learned to keep my name off things my family would mock. I built a small team, then a bigger one. I created a quiet fund to help pay hospital bills for strangers, to keep lights on for old women who sold bread, to buy uniforms for kids who wanted to learn. The fund paid for tonight's dinner too. It felt like a full circle, like kindness could come home and be welcomed. But circles can be broken and homes can be cold. My family did not know about the fund, or maybe they did but liked pretending not to. They said I was selfish because I didn't come to our big house for Sunday dinners where everyone spoke but no one listened. They said I loved money more than people. They never asked who I was helping or why I moved in silence. So tonight was supposed to be simple. Show up, smile, clap when the band played my parents' song, and maybe hug my mother if she let me. But my father wanted to win even in a room full of flowers. Pushing me out in public made him feel strong. It made me feel nothing at first, then everything. I stood outside under the riverside lights, the water moving like soft glass. In the big window above, I could see my family moving around like little figures in a scene. I watched the staff whisper after their tablets buzzed. I watched the band leader put down his violin and stare at the hotel manager. Then the lights on the rooftop flickered once, twice. The band's music did not return. I stood for 10 more seconds because those 10 seconds mattered. I wanted to see whether anyone would come down to find me to say wait, or sorry, or even why. No one came. The guards looked at me from inside like I was a stain on the floor they had to clean later. So I walked to my car, opened the door and sat down. My chest felt hollow but my mind was sharp. I was not going to fight. I was not going to beg. I was done trying to win in a house built on pride. I drove home on the quiet road, the river running beside me like the past. Always there, always moving, never stopping when you ask. At my apartment, I made tea and turned off my phone. I remembered when I was 10 and asked my father why he called me the mistake. He had laughed and said, "Stop being dramatic." I learned then that some people feel big when they make you feel small. I promised myself I would never do that to anyone. It is why I help people without my name on it. It is why strangers feel closer to me than my own blood. My apartment was calm. The blue chair by the window felt safe. I let myself cry for 60 seconds. 60 only. I counted them slow. 1, 2, 3. At 60, I wiped my face and breathed. I thought of my team, my clients, the kids with new uniforms, the bakery that did not close, the old man who smiled when his power came back on. My pain felt smaller beside their joy. I had almost convinced my heart to sleep when my phone began to buzz on the table. I had turned it face down, but the sound filled the room like a swarm of bees. First one buzzed, then many. I flipped it over. Missed call from unknown. Missed call from Nora. Missed call from Mom. 3 new messages from Leo. 10 from numbers not saved. The screen kept lighting up as if it had a fever. Then someone pounded on my door so hard that the blue chair shook. I stood, frozen for a second. The pounding came again, louder. "Abigail," a voice yelled from the hall. It was a man's voice, low and tight. "Open the door. Please." I looked through the peephole. The corridor camera showed 2 men in black suits, not the same guards from the restaurant but the same kind of men who like to stand with feet apart and hands crossed like a gate. They were breathing hard like they had run. Behind them, a woman in a river blue dress leaned against the wall, pressing a cloth to her mouth, crying without making a sound. My phone buzzed again. A text from Leo popped up. "Abby, pick up. This is bad. Please." Another from an unknown number. "This is Ben, the hotel manager. We need to speak. Please call me." And then from my mother, "Are you home?" That was all. 3 words from the woman who could never find words for me when I was a child. "Are you home?" I swallowed. My throat felt dry. I didn't open the door. I asked, "Who are you?" through the wood. The man closest to the door said, "We're from Riverside. We need to talk, ma'am." His voice tried to be calm. It wasn't. I thought of how easy it is to be tricked when your heart is soft, and how many times my family had used my soft heart. The lock felt warm under my thumb. "Talk through the door," I said. There was a pause. The man took a slow breath. "The payment for the event was canceled," he said, choosing each word like it might explode. "The band, the flowers, the food, staff overtime. All of it. The balance is due. Tonight." I closed my eyes. I could see the rooftop again, the long table, the candles, the smiles when the first plates arrived. I said nothing. The man kept going. "Mr. Cole," he stopped himself. "Your father, he says he doesn't have it. He says the support was from you." He waited. Silence is a kind of power. I let it sit between us. He tried again. "Ma'am, the staff took 2 hours to set up. We have the cake. We have the projector. We have the florist on site. We are past midnight. I wanted to ask where my father was. I wanted to ask if he had used the word beggar when he told the manager he would not pay. I wanted to ask if my mother was still staring at her plate. But questions can be traps. "Why are you at my home?" I asked instead. The man's voice dropped lower. "Because it got worse." Inside my phone, messages kept climbing like a ladder to the ceiling. A voice note from Leo came in and I pressed play. My brother's voice cracked. "Abby, I am sorry. I should have spoken up. Dad told them to remove your photo from the slideshow. He said he didn't want a charity case face in his memory reel." The band heard. The manager heard. People started to whisper. Then the manager got a message about the payment. "You went to Dad." Dad shouted. Mom fainted. The cake fell. The band packed up. "They're threatening to call the police on Dad for trying to leave without settling the bill. Abby, please answer the door. Please." I put the phone down gently. My brother's words floated in the air like ash after a fire. I looked through the peephole again. The woman in the river blue dress, who I now realized was the host from the lobby, was sobbing quietly. She had a smear of frosting on her sleeve. The 2 men looked like they hated their job tonight. I unlocked the door and opened it just enough for my face. The nearest man took a small step back, surprised. "Ma'am," he said. Up close his eyes were kind. "We are not here to fight you. We are just stuck in the middle. The manager asked us to come because your father refused to stay. He said he'll ruin the place if we embarrass him any longer. He already threw a chair." I felt my mouth go dry. "He threw a chair?" The man nodded. "He said if we try to block him, he'll call his friends at the papers." But people recorded him yelling. We are trying to settle without police. My stomach turned. Pride is a heavy boat. It sinks everything it carries. Where is he now? I asked. In the parking lot, the man said, shouting. Your mother is awake, but she's shaking. Your sister is crying. Your brother is begging the manager not to call the police. And the florist is demanding payment now because the flowers are custom and can't be reused. The host in the river blue dress lifted her head. He told me I was a nobody, she whispered. He said he would get me fired for letting you in the lobby. I'm sorry. I shouldn't be saying this. I'm tired. Her hand shook. I wanted to hug her, which surprised me. I don't hug strangers, but she didn't feel like one. Inside my head, a quiet voice spoke. Not anger. Not shame. Just truth. You did not start this. You did not throw the chair. You did not use the word beggar. You are not the boat that sinks. I looked at the men and the host and said in a steady voice, why did you come to my home? The first man answered, to ask if you want to fix this your way before it gets worse for everyone. The manager said he knows about your foundation. He said if you want to handle it, he will keep the police out, he will protect the staff from more shouting, and he will make sure the recordings don't go online. He also said he knows you paid for it originally under another name. He put it together. The host nodded. We see a lot of parties, she said softly. We notice things. The man continued, he sent us because he thinks you're the only one who can close this night without more damage. I leaned my head against the door, not to cry but to listen to myself. If I fix it, I'd be saving people who watched me be pushed out. I'd be saving a father who chose his pride over my face. I'd be giving my mother a soft bed and my siblings a way home without a police report. I'd also be teaching everyone again that they can break me and I will still pay the bill. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Leo. Abi, please don't let them arrest him. Please. He is wrong, but he is still our father. My chest ached at the word our father, our mother, our mess. A new message from Nora followed, short and hot. If you did this on purpose, you are evil. My jaw tightened. I had left the table quietly. I had canceled support quietly. I had gone home quietly, only my father had chosen noise. I looked back at the host. If I pay now, I said, will everyone be released? Will the staff be safe? Will the videos stay with the manager? The men nodded. Yes, ma'am, said the first. We can all go home. The host wiped her eyes. I can go home, she whispered almost to herself. My feet hurt. I stepped back, opened the door wide, and gestured toward the small dining table inside. Okay, I said. We will do this my way. The men relaxed a little. The host stepped in careful, like she didn't want to leave dirt on my floor. One of the men handed me a tablet with the invoice open. The number stared back at me, clean and mean. I paused with my finger over the screen. Before I press anything, I said, I need one thing. The men tensed again. What is it? I took a breath. I need the manager to send a message to my father that says, your bill has been settled by the person you called a beggar. Please leave now without another word. And I need you to deliver one box to my mother before she goes. It's on that chair. I pointed to the silver bow gift bag I had brought home. The host swallowed. What's inside? A small photo album, I said. Only pictures of her and me. No one else. With notes on the back. The host's mouth trembled. That's beautiful, she said. The man with the tablet nodded. We can do that. I pressed my thumb to the screen and typed a security code. The payment window opened. My breath was steady. My mind was clear. I would not be the boat that sinks. I would be the shore. I would be the rule I wished I had learned as a child. You can be kind without letting people walk on you. I hit pay. The tablet spun for a second and then flashed accepted. The men exhaled. The host closed her eyes like a prayer. My phone buzzed at once. 3 messages from the manager. Received. Thank you. Then the screenshot of the text he had sent to my father. And then, we will clear the rooftop. Staff will exit in order. Video files secured. I nodded. Thank you, I said. The host picked up the gift bag with both hands like it was made of light. I'll take this to your mother myself. Then the corridor erupted in noise. Footsteps. Voices. A bang against the far wall. The first man ran to the door and looked down the hall. What is that? The host whispered. From the elevator, the doors slid open hard, and my father stepped out with 2 other men, his tie crooked, his hair wild like a storm had passed through it. He saw me and pointed, not like a father seeing a daughter, but like a hunter spotting a mark. Abigail, he shouted, voice hot and broken. Open this door now. He was already in my doorway. The men from Riverside stiffened. Sir, one said, please calm down. My father pushed past him and slammed his hand against the doorframe so hard the wood rang. His face was red, his eyes small. You think you can humiliate me? He spat. You think you can control me with your charity tricks? His finger jabbed the air near my face. You will undo whatever you did. Do you hear me? You will fix it and you will apologize to every person who saw me embarrassed. My body went cold and calm at the same time. The night is over, I said evenly. The bill is settled. You may go home. He laughed, ugly and loud. Paid with whose money, beggar? The host flinched. The men stepped closer. Sir, the first one said, please step back. My father's lip curled. He reached for the tablet on my table as if to smash it. I caught his wrist. He froze, shocked that I touched him. Our eyes locked. I let go at once and stepped back, not out of fear but out of choice. Don't touch my things, I said, still calm. He stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. Something dark moved across his face. He used to look like a man. Right now he looked like a fire. Behind him, the elevator doors opened again. My mother stood there, pale and small, clinging to Leo's arm. Nora trailed behind, eyes swollen, mascara smeared. The host gasped and pressed the gift bag to her chest. Ma'am, she said to my mother, this is for you. My mother's eyes found the silver bow. For a heartbeat, her face softened. Then my father whirled, pointed at the bag and barked, throw that away. Leo stepped between them, hands up. Dad, stop. My father shoved his hand aside. He turned back to me, mouth open, words ready to slice. But before any sound came, a new voice cut through the hallway, firm and official. Sir, step away from the door. Two police officers appeared at the end of the hall, one speaking into a radio. The manager must have changed his mind, or maybe a neighbor had called. My father's head snapped toward them. He bared his teeth like a trapped thing. Then he did the one thing I never thought he would do. He grabbed the gift bag from the host's hands, tore the silver bow free, and hurled the bag at the wall so hard the little photo album burst out and slid across the floor, open to a picture of me and my mother by the river, both of us laughing, both of us barefoot in the mud. The hallway went silent. My mother stared at the photo like it was a ghost. Leo whispered, Dad, what have you done? The officer started forward, slow but sure. My father lifted his chin, eyes bright with pride and something worse. He turned back toward me like the whole world was a courtroom and he was the judge, and said loud enough for the building to hear, You are not my daughter. You are not my daughter, echoed down the hallway like a hammer on glass, and for one long breath no one moved. The two officers froze. The host in the blue dress held the torn gift bag like it was a bird with a broken wing. Leo stared at our father as if the ground under his shoes had slipped. Nora covered her mouth and stared at me, waiting to see if I would shatter. I did not. I looked at the photo album open on the floor, me and my mother by the river, both barefoot, both laughing, and I picked it up, dusted off the corner, and slipped it into the bag the way you tuck a child back into bed. Sir, step back now, the older officer said, calm but hard. My father squared his shoulders, pride blazing in his eyes like a sign that said, hear me. Arrest me then, he dared, lifting his chin. Arrest a man for speaking the truth in his own city. The younger officer glanced at me as if to ask for a signal. I gave none. The choice was not mine and I would not carry it for everyone again. The hotel manager hurried around the corner, then, out of breath, tie loose, face pale. He stopped when he saw my father at my door and lifted his hands. Mr. Cole, he said evenly, please step away so we can close this night without more damage. My father laughed in his face. You close nothing. I will buy this entire street and fence it. He tried to push forward again. The older officer took a small step, blocked him with one arm, and the younger officer's hand touched his radio. That's enough, the older one said. Turn around. For a heartbeat, pride argued with fear inside my father's eyes. Pride won. He lunged, not at me, not at the officers, but at the host, as if the softest person in the hallway was the safest target. My body moved before my mind. I stepped between them and raised my hand. I did not strike him. I only held up a palm like a door. His forward motion met my stillness. Something in him stuttered, as if confusion was a rock in his throat. The officer seized that second, took his wrists, and turned him to the wall with practiced care. Hands behind your back, the older one said, voice level. The sound of the cuffs was not loud, but it was heavy, like a lid set on a boiling pot. My mother gasped and sagged against Leo. Please, she whispered to the air, to the floor, to me, to no one. Please stop. I looked at her and saw the small lines near her mouth that I had never noticed because I was always looking away to protect my own heart. She was shaking. Nora reached for her, and for a second they looked like two girls in a storm, clinging to each other and waiting for the wind to choose a direction. The manager cleared his throat softly. "Miss Abigail," he said, eyes on me, "we will remove everyone now. Thank you for your help. I will file a report for the vandalism and note that you declined to escalate." He was trying to give me a road with fewer sharp stones. I nodded. "Please make sure the staff get home safe," I said. He nodded back. "They will." The officers paused with my father at the turn of the hall. He twisted to look at me one more time, eyes hot with a familiar fire. "No matter what you buy, you will never be one of us," he hissed. I studied his face with a strange, quiet sadness. The storm that lived in him did not start tonight, and it would not stop because of me. "Maybe that is a gift," I said gently. He spat on the floor near my shoes. The younger officer tightened his grip and guided him away. The hallway exhaled. The host finally put the damaged bag on my table and whispered, "I'm sorry," though she had nothing to apologize for. The manager thanked the officers, then turned to me. "I'll send confirmation," he said. "We'll speak tomorrow about a staff wellness fund." Tonight was rough. I understood what he was doing. He was giving me a way to turn pain into something that watered other lives. "Send me the list of names," I said. "We'll do it." He dipped his head and left. The host followed him, but when she reached the elevator she looked back at me with eyes that said more than words, then stepped inside. Silence moved in like a guest we could not refuse. Leo helped our mother to the small bench near my door. She would not look at me. Her hands twisted at the hem of her dress, a nervous seamstress sewing the air. "Mom," Leo said softly, "sit. Drink water." I brought a glass from my kitchen and held it out. My mother stared at it as if it was a test in a language she had never learned. "Thank you," she whispered finally, voice thin as thread. Her fingers shook against the glass. A small arc of water leapt and fell like a fish. Nora had stopped crying and was watching me with the wide, careful eyes of a cat in a new room. "You set him up," she said flatly, anger doing push-ups in her throat. I did not flinch. "No," I said, quiet but firm. "He set himself on fire and then shouted at the rain for not listening." Nora's mouth trembled. "You always talk in puzzles," she snapped, but her voice was more tired than sharp. Leo stood between us like a bridge trying not to break. "Enough," he said. "Not now." He turned to me. "Abby, thank you for paying." The words were small and clean and heavy with things we had never said to each other. I nodded once. "I did it for the people who would have been hurt if I didn't," I said. "And for Mom." The word Mom made my mother close her eyes. She took a slow breath that sounded like a door opening in winter. Then she put the glass down carefully, as if putting down a decision that had cut her hands for years, and reached for the gift bag. Her fingers hovered over the silver bow that my father had torn. She lifted the little album out and held it on her lap, not opening it, just holding it like the weight of the past could teach her how to stand in the present. "Abigail," she said at last, my name breaking on the way out, "when your father said those words, he was cruel. But he was also telling the truth he uses as a weapon." The floor under me tilted half an inch. My breath went shallow. Leo's head snapped toward her. "Mom?" Nora went still, eyes wide. My mother stared at the album. "You were not born from me," she said, every word like a step across a river at night. "You were placed in my arms on a hot afternoon when the world felt like a fever. The room seemed to shrink around us until we were only four hearts lined up like drums." "Explain," Nora whispered, fear dressing itself as command. My mother did not look at her. She looked at me, and for the first time in my life it felt like she was truly seeing me, not the idea of me, not the trouble, not the mirror she refused. "I was very young," she said. "Your father was already building his image. He was already a man who liked to win, and he liked to hide the rules that let him win. I could not carry a child to term. We tried again and again. The house felt like a hospital that had forgotten how to heal. He would not accept loss. He found a way that was not legal and told me it was mercy." She swallowed. "He brought you home and said, 'Say nothing and smile.' I did not ask the question that would have saved me. I took you in my arms and felt the world go still." Her voice cracked. "You did not cry. You just looked at me as if you knew the house was cold and you had brought your own son." Leo sat down slowly on the arm of the chair, eyes wet. "Why didn't you tell us?" he asked, voice full of a boy lost in a store. "Why didn't you tell her?" My mother's eyes shifted to the hallway where the officers had taken my father. "Fear is a builder," she said. It builds rooms without windows and tells you the dark is your friend. She looked back at me. I wanted to tell you every day. I told myself I would do it when you turned 10, then when you turned 15, then when you left at 18. And every time I failed, I chose another lie to live with the first one. I am sorry. The apology did not come like a grand speech. It came like rain that had waited too long and finally found the ground. It did not fix the harvest. It did something smaller and just as holy. It told the soil it was seen. My hands were steady, which surprised me. If it was not legal, I said, my voice even, then someone somewhere is missing a daughter. The sentence hung between us like a wire. My mother winced as if the words had cut her skin. There is more, she whispered. Nora took a sharp breath. Mom, no, she said as if she could block the ocean with her hands. Not now. My mother closed her eyes and held the album tighter. Tonight at the dinner, she said, when your father shouted and the manager came, a woman arrived near the door. She was older than me but had the same river in her eyes. She was looking for someone. She said a name that I have not said out loud in 31 years. She opened her eyes and they were full of an old storm and a new light. She said, Mara. The name slid across the room and curled at my feet like a stray cat waiting to be fed. My heart made a small, confused sound that only I could hear. Who is Mara? Leo asked quietly. My mother's mouth trembled. It was the name written on the blanket you came in, she said. I hid the blanket in a box under the bed for 20 years. Your father burned the box when he found it. I kept a photograph. It is the only secret I kept from his fire. She reached into her purse with careful hands and pulled out a folded, faded photo wrapped in plastic. She handed it to me like it was a piece of the sky. I unfolded it. There I was, a small bundle in a white hospital blanket with a tiny blue stripe, a name written in messy ink at the edge, Mara. A second name in smaller letters under it, Riverlight Clinic. A date. The city across the river, poor, busy, loud. The paper smelled like dust and time. My throat closed. The woman who came, my mother whispered, said the clinic had a nurse who disappeared that same week. She said the nurse had been under pressure from men who paid for secrets. She said there were babies missing from the records in those months. She said she has been searching for a daughter named Mara since the summer your father brought you home. The room swayed and righted again. Nora gripped the bench. This is insane, she said, but the words sounded weak in her mouth like cardboard in rain. Leo put his hand on my shoulder and left it there, warm and shaking. A soft knock interrupted us. 3 small taps like a careful question. The older officer stood at the door with his hat in his hands, eyes gentler now. We've taken him in for the night, he said quietly. No charges from the hotel if the manager's terms hold. But there's a woman downstairs asking for you, ma'am. She says her name is Ruth. He paused. She says she came from the riverside after she was told where you live. He glanced at my mother and his voice lowered another shade. She says she might be your mother. The hallway seemed to widen and narrow at the same time. My mother's fingers dug into the album. Her face went white, then gray, then a color I don't have a name for. No, she whispered, but it was not a refusal, it was an old habit breaking in public. Nora stood up so fast the bench squealed against the wall. Don't let her in, she blurted. This is a scam. People do this. They smell money. The officer kept his eyes on me. Ma'am, he said, the woman isn't demanding anything. She's just holding a paper and a small blanket with a blue stripe. She's very calm. She asked me to say this exactly, tell her I am not here to take. I am here to give back what was stolen. My heart stepped forward like a person. Leo's hand pressed my shoulder once, a signal we invented as children when we hid under the table during fights. I am here, I am here, I am here. I looked at my mother. Tears finally broke free and ran down her face, simple and honest. Whatever you choose, she said, voice frayed, I will stand with you. Outside, somewhere far and near, the river moved in the dark as it always does, carrying secrets and washing them thin until they learned the shape of truth. I drew a breath that went all the way to the soles of my feet, then another, then looked at the officer and said, the knock was soft but my heart felt it like thunder. The officer still stood in my doorway, his hat in his hands, eyes steady and kind. She says her name is Ruth, he repeated, as if saying it gently would make it easier to hold. She says she might be your mother. His words fell into the room like a stone into deep water, and the ripples kept widening, across my chest, across the faces of the people I grew up with, across every old silence we had used like blankets. Nora moved first. She jumped up so quickly that the bench scraped the wall. No, she snapped, pointing at the door like her finger could be a knife. This is insane. Don't let her in, Abby. People make up stories when they smell weakness. Or money. Or both. You'll regret it. Her eyes were bright and hard the way glass is, beautiful from far away, dangerous when it breaks. Leo didn't move at all. His palm stayed on my shoulder, warm and steady, the way it had been when we were children hiding under the dining table during Dad's rages. His voice was low. Abby, if she has the same blanket, if it matches the photograph Mom kept, we can't ignore that. We've lived with closed doors long enough. My mother sat like a statue someone had carved from worry. Her fingers gripped the small photo album on her lap. She tried to speak and a small sound came out, half breath, half apology. She can't be here, she whispered, but it was not command, it was fear, old and thin and tired of being brave. I stood and my knees felt like glass, but my spine held. Bring her up, I told the officer. He gave me a single nod, like a man acknowledging a bridge that might hold, and stepped away. The hallway outside filled with soft footsteps and hushed voices. Then a woman came into view, and the air changed in that small way it does when truth enters a room. She was in her late 50s, maybe early 60s, hard to tell because time had been heavy on her. A simple scarf wrapped her hair. Her dress was plain. Her face had lines, not from vanity or smiles for cameras, but from work and grief and light that refused to go out. In her hands she held a folded hospital blanket with a blue stripe. Her fingers shook around it like she was holding a small bird that might fly if she blinked. She looked at me as people look at water when they have been walking a desert. She did not rush. She did not cry out. She breathed one word, small and full and careful, Mara. The name struck me and rang through my bones. Not Abigail. Mara. I heard it like an echo from a place I had never visited but somehow recognized, the seconds before a heartbeat, the quiet in a mother's chest. I tried to breathe and my lungs forgot their job. My mother let out a sound like a thread snapping. Nora shook her head over and over as if the motion could turn time backward. Ruth lifted the blanket. I kept this for 31 years, she said. Her voice was soft and level, the voice of someone who had repeated a story to walls for so long that the words had learned to stand on their own. They told me you died the night you were born. They gave me nothing to hold. I buried an empty box because there was no body, only paperwork. But I never believed them. I knew my child was alive. A mother knows. Her hands trembled harder. Tonight, someone at the riverside whispered about a woman who paid for a party and walked out with her head high while a man called her beggar. They described your face. They said you looked like the river when a storm is coming, calm on top, deep and moving below. And the blanket, she swallowed. They said they saw a photograph with the blue stripe. I looked at the blanket. The ink at the corner was faded but the letters still held. Mara, written in a nurse's quick hand. I felt the photograph in my pocket like a heartbeat. Leo's fingers pressed my shoulder once. I am here. What happened? I asked. My voice was even but thin. How could I be yours and end up here? Ruth's eyes darkened, not with anger, but with the pain of telling the same story for too long. The clinic had old walls and young nurses, she said. Too few beds. Too little money. I had a fever after labor. They took you, said they would clean you and bring you back. Hours passed. They came with papers and a voice that did not look me in the eye. I'm sorry. I begged. I screamed. They made me drink something to quiet me. Later, I learned there were names missing from the registry. That men with suits came at night and babies vanished. She gripped the blanket. I found a nurse who cried when she saw me. She said, forgive me. They paid me to lie. She left town the next day. Nora folded her arms so tight it looked like she wanted to disappear into herself. Stories. So many stories, she muttered, but her voice had lost its sharpness. It sounded more like a door closing slowly. I turned to my mother, the woman who had packed my lunches and taught me to iron a shirt so the collar sits like it's proud of you, the woman who looked away when I needed eyes most. Tears cut clear lines down her face. She didn't move to wipe them. I failed you both, she whispered to the floor and the ceiling in the years between. The room felt small for everything we were trying to keep inside it. The walls were simple cream. The floor was clean wood that my body knew well. A plant in the corner leaned toward the window because it knew where the light lived. In the kitchen, the kettle still sat on the stove from earlier. I had turned it off after one boil. On the table lay the hotel tablet with the word accepted glowing like a final bell. These small, ordinary things held the shape of a life I thought I understood. Now they watched me the way a room watches someone who has just changed their name. If you are my mother, I asked Ruth, why come now? Why not 10 years ago? 20? Her mouth trembled. Because I didn't know where to find you, she said. Every hint I found led to a shut door. People with money bought quiet. People without money were taught to keep their heads down. I kept cleaning floors and listening. I prayed with my hands busy so my mind wouldn't break. Then tonight I saw you. And when I saw you, I remembered the way your first cry sounded in my ear. I remembered the way the wall clock clicked in that room. I remembered the exact color of the window glass. I have been walking with those memories like stones in my pockets. I had to try again. I stood straighter, not to be taller, but to make more room for air. What would you like from me? I asked, not unkind, not afraid, just honest. Money? A place? A role? Her eyes filled but did not spill. I came to give, not to take, she said. To give the truth back to you. To give you my name if you want it. To give my hands if you need them. To give time. To give the story so it stops poisoning both of us. She looked down at the blanket like it could answer for her. And if you say no, I will still be grateful I saw your face. Leo's breath shuddered. He had always been the peacemaker, the one who learned to set the table for storms and serve calm. Abby, he murmured, we don't have to decide tonight. But we can't pretend we didn't hear this. My mother put a trembling hand over the photo album. I was 19, she said, voice small and straight. Your father had already learned that power moves like water. He said we would take the child and call it mercy. He said the world only respects winners. He said if I spoke he would break me. I let fear build me a house with no windows. She raised her eyes to Ruth. I am sorry. The apology was not a performance. It was a bowl of water set down in a dry place. Ruth nodded once. I have carried anger for so long it became bone, she said. Tonight I put some of it down. That is already a lot. The officer stayed in the hall, giving us space like a guard who understood he was standing outside a room where a new country was being drawn. In my kitchen, the refrigerator motor hummed. A car passed outside and left a ribbon of sound that faded. My phone, face down on the table, lit up, then went dark, then lit again. Messages kept coming, a parade of voices I had no room for yet. Ruth, I said, testing the name the way you test a step on a bridge, I don't know what happens next. I don't know what to call you when I wake up tomorrow. I don't know how to carry two mothers in one heart without breaking something. The truth felt like a heavy bowl in my hands. But I know I don't want to lie anymore. Her shoulders dropped, only an inch, but like a woman set down a bag she had carried for years. That is enough for today, she said. Then from the stairwell noise rose. Not ordinary noise. The buckling sound of pride trying to be a storm. The older officer's posture changed. He turned, hand near his radio. The younger one stepped into view, a simple warning in his eyes. My father's voice crashed up the stairs. I will not be silenced. Do you hear me? It was a roar I had lived with and learned around. It sent a tremor through the hall, through the frame of my door, through the soft shoulders in the room. No woman, he shouted, no beggar, no stranger will take my family name. Nora's body flinched toward the sound like a string pulled hard. He's going to make it worse, she whispered, and it wasn't threat or hope, just fact. Leo's hand left my shoulder and hovered in the air as if he could hold the noise back by will. My mother closed the album and laid it carefully on the table like one sets a child down before walking into a fire. Stay here, the older officer called into the room, voice professional but laced with fatigue. We'll handle it. He moved into the hall. The younger officer followed, shoulders squared. Their steps had the weight of men who have learned that calm is a tool, not a feeling. Ruth took a tiny step closer to me, more instinct than thought. I can leave, she whispered, if my being here puts you in danger. You are not the danger, I said. My own voice surprised me, calm even like a rope tied to a cleat on a dock. The river could rage, the boat could rock, the rope held. Footsteps hammered the stairs. A bang, metal against wall. A sharp command from the older officer we could not quite hear. Then my father's face appeared at the turn, lit by the harsh light in the stairwell. His tie was crooked, his hair wild. Pride burned behind his eyes, bright and hungry. He spotted the officer first, then the open doorway, then me, and then Ruth. His gaze stopped on the blanket in her hands as if it was a weapon. His mouth curled. Out of my way, he snarled at the officer. He took another step. The older officer raised a hand. Sir, don't. The hallway went tight and narrow, a tunnel full of words that could explode. The hotel manager's voice was somewhere behind him, trying to be water on a flame. It wasn't enough. Inside my apartment, time thickened. I could feel the pulse in my throat. I could smell the faint sweetness of the lemon soap on my kitchen counter and the glue of the album's spine. My mother's breath came in small stitches. Nora held the back of a chair, knuckles white. Leo shifted his stance like he was getting ready to do something he did not want to do. "Abi," Ruth whispered, eyes still on my father, "whatever happens, you did not make this storm. Don't let it tell you who you are." It was a small sentence, but it slid into my ribs and braced them from within. My father's voice climbed another step. "You think you can rewrite my life in one night?" He barked at the officers, at me, at the building, at the river, at anyone who would listen. "You think some woman can walk in with a rag and a story and steal my house?" He jabbed a finger in the air, aiming it through the doorway at Ruth, at my mother, at me, at the world he could not control. The older officer said something into his radio, and the word "backup" floated faintly down the hall like a promise and a warning. The younger officer shifted to block the door with his body, not aggressive, just unmovable. "Sir," he said, "this is your last warning." My father took another step, and his shoe slipped on the polished floor, and for a single absurd second he was just a man in a suit who had lost his balance in a hallway that smelled faintly of fresh paint. He caught himself on the wall, and the flush on his face deepened, anger layered with the sour shame of almost falling. He straightened, sneered, and drew breath to throw new fire. "Stop," my mother said. She said it softly. Not a scream, not a cry, not a plea. She lifted her chin, and something inside her, something that had been hiding for 3 decades, stood up. "Enough," she said louder now. "This ends." She stepped between the table and the door, between the past and the possible, between the man who had taught her fear and the women holding blankets and albums and names. She did not look back at me. She looked at my father the way a person looks at a storm after they have found the high ground. That he laughed, mean and bright. "You have no power here," he said. She tilted her head. "Watch me," she answered. The officer glanced at me, and I gave him one small nod, because sometimes a nod is a bridge between men with radios and women with shaking hands. He moved his shoulder an inch, enough that if my father lunged, he would meet a wall of training, not my mother's bones. "Ruth," I said without looking away from the doorway, "would you sit? Please." She obeyed, moving like a deer that had decided the field was safe for one breath. She kept the blanket on her lap, palms flat on it, a flag in a new country no one had recognized yet. Leo stepped to my mother's side. He didn't say he would protect her. He just stood there, not a boy, not a bridge, something else now, something carrying both. Nora came to the table too, still tight with fear, still sharp with habit, but pulled by gravity she could no longer hate. For the first time in a long time, the 4 of us made a shape that felt like family, not a photograph but a stance. My father's chest heaved. His eyes flicked from one face to another, doing the old math, where to press, where to cut, where to win. But the numbers had changed. He could not find the sum. He took in air to try again, and from the stairwell, a new voice rose. Not hotel. Not police. A woman's voice, thin with breath, strong with purpose. "Sir, step aside." Shoes hurried. Papers rustled. Someone was carrying a stack of something that knocked lightly against the rail. The older officer turned his head, surprised to see reinforcement he hadn't called. Ruth's fingers clenched the blanket. My mother's spine straightened another inch. Leo's shoulder brushed mine, a steadying weight. Nora whispered, "Who is that?" The person reached the landing, turned into the hall, and came into view. She wore a nurse's jacket faded by many washes. Her hair was pulled back. Her eyes were tired and clear. In her hands she held a thin box of files, the cardboard edges soft with age. She looked at my father, then at me, then at the blanket on Ruth's lap, and she said, breathing hard but sure, "I worked nights at Riverlight Clinic 31 years ago. I kept copies." My father's mouth opened, then closed, the way a door does when a wind it did not expect pushes back. The older officer blinked, recalculating. The younger officer's hand eased away from his radio just a fraction. The nurse lifted the box a little, as if offering it to the air. "My name is Ada," she said. "I lied once. I won't lie again." The hallway went very still. Even the building seemed to pause to listen. And from the stairwell behind her, another sound began to rise, distant at first, then growing, the steady climb of more feet, more voices, the night shifting its shape around the truth that had finally decided to speak. Ada stood in the hall with the thin box hugged to her chest, breathing like a runner at the finish line, and for a long moment none of us spoke because the room itself seemed to understand that a line we could never uncross had just been drawn. My father's voice still echoed from the stairwell below, a rough noise like metal dragged on stone, but inside my doorway there was only the soft tick of the wall clock and the hush that follows truth when it finally finds a mouth. The older officer stepped aside to let Ada enter, and she did not rush. She walked slowly, carefully, as if the box in her hands could spill, and the papers inside might break if they hit the floor. She set it on my table beside the album and the river blue blanket and looked at all of us one by one, at Ruth with her fingers pressed flat on the cloth as if it were a heartbeat, at my mother, whose back was straight now in a way I had not seen since I was small, at Leo, eyes red and steady, at Nora, rigid, arms locked across her ribs like they could hold her together. Then Ada met my eyes. "I kept copies," she said, and the words were simple but carried the weight of years. I was young and scared, and I still knew it was wrong. So I made copies and hid them in a biscuit tin, then moved them to a church storeroom when the clinic burned, then carried them in my bag every time I changed flats because I was afraid someone would come for them in the night. She opened the box and took out a folder so worn the corners had become feathers. On the cover, in faded ink, was the date, 31 years ago, and the stamp of Riverlight Clinic, a small crooked rectangle that looked like it had always been tired. Inside lay forms with lines and lines of cramped writing. Admission, delivery, neonate vitals, staff signatures. Some bold, some ashamed, some hurried as if the hand wanted to get away from what it was doing. In one record, halfway down a page ruled with blue, was a column labeled name, and in that space a nurse had scrawled Mara in letters that leaned forward like a person running. Underneath, a second hand had written deceased, then scratched it out with 2 quick strokes that did not fully hide the word. "This is the truth the clinic buried," Ada said. The entry was changed after the night shift. The baby was marked dead when she was not. A file was created for burial, but no burial record exists because there was no body to bury. The registry number on this page was reused later for a different child. That is why the count was wrong in the ward the next morning and nobody could explain it. She turned another page and tapped a line. "This is the nurse who signed the change. She left the job 2 days later. She told me she was afraid of a man who came late. A man who spoke like a boss in rooms where he had no right to speak. A man who said he could fix problems for families who paid." I asked her his name. She cried and said she did not know, only that he smelled of cologne and talked about trophies. Ada's voice did not shake, but her hands did. She steadied them on the table, palms open like a promise. I did not know what to do, so I did what I could. I kept what they tried to burn. My father appeared in the doorway again then, pulled there by the gravity of the thing he had tried to escape. The officers blocked him with shoulders and calm, but his eyes went past them and found the folder in Ada's hand like a hawk sighting its prey. "Lies," he said, but the word sounded thin now, not a blade, only a piece of paper trying to pretend it was iron. He tried a different tone, the old one that had worked on waiters and boardrooms and neighbors who wanted favors. Smooth, heavy, not loud but full of the promise of being loud later. "You are mistaken," he told Ada. "Those are forgeries. This is a setup by my ungrateful daughter. She hates her family. She wants to destroy us to feel big." His gaze slashed to me, and for the first time in my life the look could not find purchase. It slipped off my skin like water off glass and fell to the floor without sound. Ada did not blink. "Sir," she said, "you tried to pay me once and I refused. You tried to scare me once and I prayed. When you shouted tonight, I decided I would not live with your voice in my head anymore. Whether anyone listens is God's business, not mine. I will speak, and I have kept proof." The older officer took the folder from her and flipped through the pages with the careful eyes of a man who has built his life around the difference between a word and a fact. He looked at the dates, the signatures, the small errors that only real things make. He closed the file and nodded to his partner, a small motion that said, "This is not noise." My mother reached for the edge of the table like a swimmer grabbing the side of a pool after too long underwater. "I knew pieces," she whispered. "I did not want to see the shape they made. I thought if I sat very still the truth would forget me." Ruth moved her hand from the blanket to my mother's wrist and left it there, gentle as shade. "It never forgets," she said. "It only waits." Leo stepped forward, voice raw but steady. "Dad," he said, and the words sounded strange in his mouth, like a shoe that no longer fit. "You just admitted downstairs that you paid people. You told the hotel and the officers you would ruin them if they embarrassed you. We all heard you. Why keep pretending?" My father's eyes flashed, and for a second I saw not a monster but a man who had spent 30 years building a tower out of fear and naming it excellence. "I did what I had to do," he said. "Do you think success falls from the sky? I made this family. Without me you would all be nothing." My mother's chin lifted. It was not loud. It was not dramatic. It was like a door being gently closed at last. "Without you," she answered, "we might have learned to be kind sooner." The room tilted and righted. The younger officer spoke into his radio. The building breathed. My father looked at the four of us. Ruth, my mother, Leo, me, and for the first time something like confusion crossed his face, as if the chessboard he always carried had been replaced with a field and he did not know how to walk on grass. He pulled his arm back like he might lunge, but the older officer stepped in, firm but human. "Sir, that's enough for tonight. You're leaving now. There will be follow-up. Don't make this harder." The manager's voice came soft from the hall. "Please, Mr. Cole. Staff are tired. Go home." The word home sounded wrong around my father, a coat he had outgrown but refused to return. He opened his mouth to spit fire. Only smoke came. The officers guided him back a step, then another. He tried to make his pride big enough to fill the corridor, but the truth was bigger, and it did not leave room for him to spread his arms. When he was gone, the hallway lost its sharpness. The air in my apartment changed temperature, a degree warmer, like a window had been opened. Ada slid another document from the folder, a small square photo stuck to a form by a yellowing strip of tape. The picture showed a newborn wrapped in white with a blue stripe creeping into the frame, the face scrunched like all new faces that have just met air and do not trust it yet. On the back, in faint ink, a number matched the one on the file. "I should have brought this years ago," Ada said, ashamed and fierce at once. "I was afraid. I am done being afraid." She turned to Ruth and bowed her head the smallest bit. "I am sorry." Ruth shook her head, tears running clean trails. "I cannot hold anger and hold my child at the same time," she said. "I will choose my child." We sat then, not because we were finished but because our legs wanted to remind us they existed. Ruth and my mother took the two chairs on either side of the table, shoulders not quite touching, bodies angled toward the same spot like flowers bending toward the same sun. Leo dragged a chair from the corner and placed it near mine, as he used to pull a stool beside me when we were small and doing homework we did not understand. Nora hovered for a heartbeat, caught between leaving and staying, then sat on the arm of the couch with her hands flat on her knees, knuckles pale, as if telling her body to be ready for any direction. Ada stood. "You should make copies again," she said, practical through the tears. "Store one with your lawyer. Give one to the officers. Keep one where you sleep." The older officer nodded. "We'll take a set for evidence," he said. "This will not be handled in a hallway. There are procedures." His calm was a blanket and a rule at once. The younger officer added, "We'll also note the damage here and the earlier disturbance at the hotel. No one will decide this in a whisper." The manager, still at the threshold like a man who knows where his job ends and his heart begins, said, "I'll make sure my staff get counseling if they want it. Nights like this leave echoes." I looked at him and saw a tired man who had chosen decency even when it was not on the menu. "Send me your list," I said. "Tomorrow I'll fund a wellness day for them. People shouldn't have to carry other people's storms home." He nodded, a small grateful tilt, and left quietly to count his people and walk them out. After the officers took photos of the file and the blanket and the scuffed paint near my door where a cuff had brushed the wall, after they exchanged numbers with Ada and promised an investigator would call her, after the building settled into that dense late-night silence that makes every small sound intimate, Ada closed the box and pushed it toward me. "You can keep this tonight," she said. "I will come back in the morning with the rest." "The rest?" Nora asked before she could stop herself. Ada's mouth moved like a person testing a sore tooth. "Notes," she said. "Names? There were other babies. I could not save them all. But I did not forget them either." A shiver moved through the room that was not cold. "Will you testify?" Leo asked. Ada's eyes were tired and clear. "Yes," she said. "I will do what I should have done when I was 20. Ruth placed her hand on the box, then slid it away and reached for mine. Her palm was calloused from years of mops and buckets and it felt like safety. "Mara," she said, trying the name in her mouth, then catching herself. "Abigail. I don't want to take your life from you. I want to stand beside it. If you will have me." I looked at my mother. She held my gaze without flinching. "If you will have me too," she said, voice low but steady. My throat closed and then opened the way a door sticks in summer and then swings free. "I will have both," I said. "I am not a piece of furniture to be claimed. I am not a trophy to be lifted. I am a person with two beginnings. I will not cut myself in half to make anyone comfortable." The words surprised me with how solid they sounded. They did not wobble when I set them down. They stayed where I put them like stones in a path. Nora made a noise between a sob and a laugh. "You talk like a book," she said, but the insult had melted into something like awe. "Maybe books are how we learn not to be cruel," I said, and even she smiled a little at that. Leo squeezed my shoulder and let his hand fall, Not because I didn't need it, but because I had grown taller in front of him and his palm found no good place to rest. "We should sleep," he said. "Tomorrow is going to be a day full of phones and doors." The older officer agreed. "We'll have a patrol swing by twice tonight," he said. "Not because we expect trouble, but because sleep is easier when you know someone will walk past your door." He tipped his hat not as a flourish but as a sign of respect and left with his partner, their footsteps fading into the stairwell like a lullaby written by tired shoes. When the door shut, the apartment felt like a church. Not the kind with golden echo, but the kind built of wood and hands and breath. I turned the deadbolt and leaned my forehead against the door for one long second. Then I turned, and my mother stood in front of me with the album in her hands. She opened it to the first photo. The river, my small feet in mud, her younger face bent toward me with a smile that had not yet learned to hide. She touched the picture, then looked up. "I did not know how to love you loudly," she said. "I thought quiet would keep you safe. I was wrong. I will learn a new language if you teach me." Ruth stood too, the blanket folded over her arms. "And I will learn how to be here without crowding what already lives in this room," she said. I took the album in one hand and the blanket in the other and held both against my chest until my ribs protested. Then I laughed, a small, strange sound in a night full of heavy ones. "We are ridiculous," I said. "And we are new." The three of us stood like that, 3 points making a shape with no name yet, and for the first time the word family did not taste like a dare. Near dawn, when the walls had cooled and the city had put its noise away, Ruth dozed on my couch with the blanket over her knees, my mother rested in the chair with the album closed on her lap like a warm book, and I sat on the floor between them, too full to sleep, watching the light under the curtains grow from gray to thin silver. I thought of the rooftop and the broken cake and the manager with tired eyes. I thought of my father's voice shrinking in the hall. I thought of Ada's hands and the way she had said "I am done being afraid." I thought of all the rooms where people were waking to truths that would change the color of their day. "If pain is a river," I whispered to no one and to both women at once, "then maybe love is the shore." The clock said a time that used to mean meetings and calendars. Today it meant a new map. I closed my eyes for a breath and opened them to morning. The sun slid into the room without asking permission, laying a soft stripe across the table where the box sat like a quiet animal. The city began again outside, buses grumbling, a radio singing somewhere, a woman calling to a child not to forget a lunch bag, and I felt something inside me align with that ordinary music. The night had been a mountain we climbed barefoot. Morning was a small kitchen with water boiling and 3 cups waiting. I made tea because it was the only spell I knew, and the steam rising from the mugs drew the 3 of us nearer in a circle that steadied my hands. Ruth sipped first, winced at the heat, smiled as if the pain were proof she had not dreamed this room. My mother wrapped both palms around her cup and let the warmth move into her fingers before she dared speak. "Today we tell the truth in daylight," she said. It was not a threat. It was a plan. Phones woke like birds at once. The hotel manager sent a message. Staff home safe, video secured, invoice closed, gratitude. The older officer sent another. Investigator assigned, time set for statements, Ada confirmed, patrol would check by again after lunch. Leo texted a photo of my father sitting on a bench at the station with his head in his hands, then wrote, "They released him with a warning for now. He's quiet. I don't know what he'll do. I'm with Nora at Mom's place packing a bag. We'll come to you by noon." My chest softened at the "we." My name vibrated on the screen from unknown numbers and old friends who had heard whispers and wanted to attach themselves to light. I put the phone face down. "We go slow," I told the room. "We choose who to call and what to say. We do not feed the noise." At 9, Ada returned with a canvas tote and a look that said she had slept little and chosen it. She spread more papers on the table. Copies of shifts, a list of nurses' first names, a note in the margin of a ledger that read "late visitor," expensive shoes, another with "security camera broken again," written in a hand that looked annoyed and resigned. She brought a flash drive too, which made my heart jump because paper can be burned but a little piece of plastic feels like a seed you can plant in many places. "A church secretary helped me scan everything," she said. "She told me to keep the original somewhere safe but not with me." We made 3 stacks and labeled them with sticky notes from my drawer. Police, lawyer, keep, because small order is how you tame big chaos. When the investigator arrived, a woman with bright eyes that missed nothing and a notebook already open, we gave her tea and copies in our hours, and she gave us patience and questions that walked instead of ran. She looked at the file where "deceased" had been scratched out and nodded like a person who had seen too many lines like that to be surprised and not enough to stop being angry. "This will take time," she said, and the phrase, which often feels like a cold hallway, felt warm in her mouth because it came with steps and names. We will interview, we will check archives, we will talk to the church, we will ask the clinic's landlord about old boxes. We will not let this become smoke. She left with the police stack and a promise to call before sunset. By noon, Leo and Nora arrived with overnight bags and the twitchy energy of people who have been rearranging furniture inside their own heads. Leo hugged me longer than we ever had in our adult lives and did not pretend it was anything but new. Nora stood in the doorway with a face all edges and then walked into Ruth's arms like someone who had turned fast in the dark and found the door she had been groping for. She cried and laughed and apologized in a rush. Ruth stroked her hair and said, "You are allowed to feel foolish and still be loved." My mother watched with a wet smile that made the lines at her mouth look like roads to better places. We ate simple food because complicated food did not match the day. We told small stories because the big story was already full. Ruth said the blanket's blue stripe had faded because she had taken it out once a month to shake the dust and sing to it the song she would have sung to a baby. My mother said she had hidden the photo behind another photo like a shy child behind an older sibling. Leo said he used to leave the porch light on late when I moved out, even when Dad told him it was a waste, because maybe you would come back one night and not want to knock. Nora confessed the anger she had sharpened at me was a shield to hide from the way Dad's praise felt like a leash around her throat. In the telling, our voices made a bridge and we walked toward each other without falling. Afternoon brought calls we could not ignore. A family friend rang, voice syrup sweet, asking how we were holding up, and hinting that a reporter had asked questions. I smiled into the mouthpiece and said, "We are busy telling the truth," and ended the call without offering sugar back. A board member from one of my father's clubs texted a message full of words like unfortunate and misunderstanding and optics. I did not reply. Instead, I opened a fresh note on my phone and wrote 3 sentences I could live with if anyone forced me to speak. 31 years ago, a baby was taken from her mother at a clinic and brought into our house by lies. We are cooperating with authorities and supporting those who choose to testify. We ask for dignity for all involved while the facts are gathered. Then I put the note away like a fire blanket, ready if the smoke thickened. Evening came like a kind stranger bringing soup. The investigator called to say she had spoken to a retired midwife who remembered whispers of special deliveries, and a security guard who remembered a car that idled late with the engine humming and the driver who never looked you in the eye. She had also found a receipt from a storage unit rented in a fake name that matched my father's handwriting too closely to be coincidence. "We'll get a warrant," she said. "We are patient, not slow." I thanked her and told her we had tea if she needed it. She laughed, the kind of sound you make when you have been running all day and someone offers a chair. "Hold that thought," she said. When I hung up, Ruth reached for my hand under the table and squeezed it twice, the old signal a mother gives a child when she wants to say "I see you" without making the room notice. My mother covered our hands with hers, and for a moment our fingers made a braid on the wood. "We are not the same women we were yesterday," she said. "We cannot be." I thought of my father then, where he might be pacing, what mirrors he might be breaking with his eyes alone, and a pinch of fear tried to rise in my throat. I swallowed it with the memory of his voice shrinking as he was led away, and the fear folded into something else, not bravery exactly, more like the quiet knowledge that if he came roaring again he would not find the same house. He would find walls that did not echo him back. When night gentled the window, we lit one lamp and left the rest of the room in the kind of soft dark that makes people honest. Leo sat on the rug with his back against the couch and told me he wanted to leave the family business to start something small that belonged to his hands, not his last name. Nora said she was applying for a teaching program that Dad had always mocked because it didn't scale, and we cheered like she had just lifted a car. My mother asked Ruth where she lived, what she ate for breakfast, whether she liked rain, whether she had old friends who would come sit in our kitchen and argue about recipes. Ruth asked my mother what made her laugh when no one was watching, whether she had a song she hummed when she ironed, whether she remembered the smell of the river in Harmattan. They traded answers like children trading stickers, careful, delighted, a little shy. I listened and memorized because this was the part no file could teach, how 2 women could stretch a cloth between them and call it shelter without tearing it in half. The doorbell rang close to 9, and for a second our bodies went still in the animal way. Leo stood and checked the peephole. "It's Ada," he said, relief loosening his shoulders. She came in with a smile that looked like it had to fight past a day of frowns. "The warrant was approved," she said. "They'll open the storage unit tomorrow. I wanted you to hear it from me before rumors start to grow legs." Then she did something I did not expect. She took a small envelope from her pocket and placed it on the table. Inside was a photograph of a young nurse with tired eyes and a baby in her arms. The baby's face was blurred by the cheap camera, but the blanket's blue stripe showed clear as sky. On the back, the nurse had written the date in 6 words. I held her for 5 minutes. Ada tapped the picture. That nurse ran, she said softly. She carried this as proof. She died 3 years ago. Her cousin kept it. When I told him your story, he cried and gave it to me. He said the dead want their truths told as much as the living do. We passed the photo like a relic, not because it was sacred paper, but because it carried a moment nobody could steal. A poor room, a tired woman, a small life warm in her arms. I put the picture beside the album and the blanket and the files, and the 3 objects together felt like a small altar, not to suffering but to the stubbornness of love. Later, after Ada left and my mother fell asleep on the couch and Ruth stretched out on the rug with the blanket under her head because she said she slept best low to the ground, I stepped onto the balcony and let the city air wash my face. The river whispered its endless lesson. Even when men build dams and walls, water finds a way around, under, through. I thought about the girl I had been at 18, leaving the house with 1 suitcase and a map no one else could see. I thought about the woman who had walked into a restaurant with a silver-bound gift and walked out called a beggar. I thought about the moment the payment turned gray on my screen and the night lit up with knocks on my door. The 3 selves stood together in my chest like sisters who had finally met and did not need to fight for space. I am not your mistake, I told the dark, and it did not argue. In the morning we will go to the unit with the investigator and watch a metal door lift to show boxes or nothing, ghosts or evidence. In the afternoon we will sign papers and choose careful sentences and send them into the world like small boats we hope the waves won't eat. Next week I will meet with the manager and fund that wellness day, and I will sit on plastic chairs and listen to servers tell stories about how people treat them when no one is looking, and I will remember to keep tipping like a prayer. Next month, I will stand with Ruth in a small church and light a candle for the nurse who ran and for babies whose names were never written and for a younger me who carried an empty space and did not know its shape. And when the time is right, I will look my father in the eyes in a room with a door that cannot be slammed and say, I am finished letting your pride name me. He may rage. He may shrink. He may pretend I am a ghost. None of that will change the fact that I stood in my doorway and chose the shore. For now, before sleep, I write a note to you who are listening, because this story did not happen only to me. It happens wherever a person learns that belonging is not something you beg for, it is something you build with people who tell the truth even when their hands shake. If you are the black sheep at a table set with knives, take your son and step outside. Sometimes the family you need will knock with a blanket and a file and a tired smile and say your name like water. Sometimes you will have to be the one who keeps the copies in a biscuit tin and waits for a night when you are done being afraid. Either way, morning comes, and with it tea and cups, and a table strong enough to hold both your beginnings. Subscribe to this channel to support our growth. Where are you watching from? I want to shout out your city in the next episode. And tell me in the comments, if you discovered a second beginning to your life, what truth would you speak first?